What up, squad? Welcome back to the We Are Gods podcast. I am your host, Brix Glover, and today we're going to be talking about habit formation, right? Because I think a journey towards any sort of goal is totally different when you approach it with the intention of, all right, I know what I want to achieve. What sort of habits do I need to form in order to achieve said goal? So obviously, Willie, Juan, you guys had your personal transformations and not just weight loss, but in many areas of your life. I want us to really get to the bottom of how you changed your habits and just kind of get into the psychology of habit formation in general. Juan, what are your thoughts on habits in general? Is it something that was even on your radar before you learned about the power of it?
Absolutely. Because anything that I'd done prior with success, I realized, okay, there's habits that have been formed here. Absolutely, there's been habits that have been formed here. And, so when we talked about what the topic was going to be today, I just sat with the word. I like doing that, like just sitting with the word and like, what does this word mean to me? What does it encompass? And I was literally, so you and I did a 72-hour water fast this week. One of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my life. Like one of the toughest. I don't finish that shit if it weren't for like you doing it by my side. I wanted to quit like way sooner than 72 hours. But I think about what that did for me and what it's created going forward. And it's like, man, I've implemented all these habits in my life. And it's the reason why so much shit in my life flows the way it flows. Right. So I thought of the word habit, right? And I was like, habit, what does that mean? And I thought healing actions by igniting today.
Bro, wait, did you fucking make that up?
I did. I absolutely did.
So run that back.
Healing actions by igniting today.
Igniting today.
Right.
Action.
So here, let me break that down and how that came to be and why I created that little acronym. People have heard of this, that 21 days forms a habit. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. The way I've mentalized this, the way I've gone about creating habits in my life is I can't think, having a goal is great. We should have goals. But for me, when I go too far ahead, I fucking self-sabotage. I get into my head and I think about like, oh, it's way out there. And one of the most powerful books that I've read here more recently and continue to reread, love his stuff, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, right? And he talks about how nothing really exists in the future and the past. Everything happens from presence, from being right here, right now, right? So when you're here, when you simplify it, like, okay, I'm here, and you observe, like, okay, I'm thinking about that shit in the future. I'm thinking about what I was like in the past, and you can let that go and just like be in the space of like, I'm here right now. Well, you can realize that like this moment matters, and I can ignite today. So it's really about it's about creating moments like that so that you put things into place, and then before you know it, it becomes a habit. Before you end up looking back and be like, oh shit, I've been doing that for a while, right? So that's how I broke that down. It's like, okay, I think about like obviously working out. Have I done it every single day for the past 5 years? No. Have I done it most of the time? Yeah. I don't even think about it anymore. It's like my body says, hey, we gotta go get in a lift. We got to go do this and that. It's like, that's a habit. That's a part of my life. Most people brush their teeth every day, right? Some don't, right? But most people do, right? You don't think about that, right? It's something that you were told as a kid, like, oh, I got to go do this. Like, and that's the end goal of what you want any habit to be. But creating habits heals a part of you, right? It heals a part of you because when you really think about it, it's like I use triggers in my life, things when I'm like, oh, like I need to do this, I need to do that, like things that are uncomfortable. I look at that as a signal that I need to look at something because like what I'm doing right now isn't what my soul wants. So what do I need to do to heal that? right? Well, when I was going down this journey and like fluctuating up and down, it's like fuck, I keep trying these fad diets that I'll lose the weight and then I put it right back on, right? It was like I'm too focused on what it's going to be like in the future. I want to feel this way for the rest of my life. I want to feel this way every single day as much as I possibly can. So it's like
Yeah.
I want to create habits to that, right? So like when you create habits, you're literally healing parts of you. You're healing those parts of you that are calling from your soul to address that, right? And
Yeah.
it all happens in this moment, igniting it right now.
Yeah, I love that. No, I love that perspective on habits. I never really thought about it that way. You know, how habits are a tool for healing. When I think about intentional habit formation based on a particular goal, I think about systems, right? I think about finding ways to manage your willpower. You don't have to use as much willpower once a behavior or a routine element becomes a habit. You don't have to use willpower to brush your teeth in the morning. It's just a part of you. And I think conceptually, we can imagine what it's like for exercise to be like brushing your teeth. But once you experience what that feels like for me, a habit is established when it's easier to do it than not to do it. And at this point, with exercise, if I don't exercise, my entire life feels off. And that's how I know it's become a part of me. But that also means that it doesn't tap into my willpower stores to do it. It's just automated. So Willie, what are your thoughts on habits and how have you leveraged them for success in your journey?
Yeah, I think for me, it always starts with goals. I think goals become before habits personally. Like I'm a start with the end in mind. So like think of a frame of who you want to be. And I think the one thing that probably unites most of us is we all have an idea of who like where we want to go or to some extent and some type of goal, whatever that is, right? Like there's something that we would classify as a goal in our life, even down to the probably the least ambitious person, they have some goal, even if the goal is to gain 5 followers, right? And so then you think about habits as like the inputs to those goals. And so when I think about habits, I think about what does a person that has six-pack abs, what is the person that looks like he gets all the women, what is somebody who's has calmness, what's the person that gets all the money, what are the habits that they do every single day that would get me to those goals? And so I literally look at habits as just the things that we would do or that we would form to ultimately get us to the place that we need to get to. And so for me, like habits have always been something that I've not always like looked at like instinctively or analyzed, but over the last year or two, I've really looked at like my time and the things that I repeatedly do every day and truly say like, do these align to the person that I ultimately want to be? Or do I have habits of someone who is, aesthetically pleasing? Do I have habits of someone who is really good with their money? Do I have habits of someone who has great relationship with their kids? Do I have habits of somebody who has really good romantic relationships? And so I think for us, we all have to look at, habits as like what really comes before the actual outcome that we desire. All your habits is what eventually leads you to where you ultimately are. If you were to look at a guy who's homeless and you were to ask him what his habits are, his habits would probably identify as someone who is homeless.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, our identities, our
yeah,
lives
you're
are the
absolutely
result
right.
of our habits, right?
Right, literally.
It says, I saw this quote somewhere. It says, your habits are the invisible architects of your life.
Absolutely. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm saying. So I think that quote sums it up is that if we look at habits as the architect to what we're building, I think we'd spend more time on our habits than the goal, than the outcome.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of starting with the goal, reverse engineering the goal and breaking it down into, okay, what habits do I have to form in order for this to be my forever reality? And that's a very different approach when compared to, oh, I need to go on this diet or I need to do this or that. It's a very different energy behind, it's a very different intention that has a more sustainable outcome when you're looking at it that way. Because I think when you approach, let's say, a weight loss journey with the idea like, okay, I got to form certain habits, I think by default, it introduces more grace, right? Because we all know it takes time to form habits, right? Whereas when we're approaching weight loss, that level of understanding of the time that it takes often eludes us, right? Sometimes we miss that part because we just want it so bad. So I think the element of approaching weight loss with this intention of forming habits to help me build the body, it automatically helps you pace it a little bit. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that? Do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely, man. And I think we all touched on like components that create like the natural systems for us to have habits that serve us, right? Willie talked about having the end goal in mind and how that's super critical, right? You have to have that. And then I mentioned understanding the importance of today and how today, no matter what the result was or what you didn't do or did do yesterday, it really doesn't matter. Like, what are you doing today? What are you doing to ignite today, right? To create those healing actions, right? So, yeah, and then that naturally creates these systems in your life, and then all of a sudden you'll look and you have all these things in place where you're doing all these things because, like you mentioned, it becomes easier to actually do it versus not do it. Your body feels right because you actually went and took that action. It's like, okay, that can be checked off today, but you almost don't even, you instinctively check it off, right? You instinctively, it's just a part of you, right? Before, and that's how you create really, really great habits.
Yeah. So I want us to all talk about our habits, right? Like, let's kind of do an overview of our habits and talk a little bit about why we've installed certain habits, right? Based on whatever our goals are. And then I want us to kind of go back to the beginning of our weight loss journeys and think about, okay, what we would have done different from the perspective of habit formation, right? So for me, right now, my biggest goals as far as my health is mobility. So I've definitely incorporated yoga, stretching into my day every single day. Another one of my goals is to obviously level up financially. So I have a habit of checking my net worth every day, checking all of my accounts, checking all the activity of my business, the sales, right? It's a part of my morning routine to check my spreadsheets and all of this shit. Let me tell you guys, it took so much intention for me to get there because the idea of looking at fucking spreadsheets or checking my net worth, it used to make my stomach hurt. The idea of doing this shit every day. That's one of the realities of forming habits, especially the habits that will change your life. Most of the time, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? It's going to be extremely uncomfortable. So I want us to mentally brace ourselves for that element of it. And I think the more you're able to push past that discomfort and really stick to a routine, obviously that's going to yield most of the results. So yes, I check my net worth. I check my numbers every day. That's a big habit of mine. Meditation is a huge habit of mine. Every single day, I meditate at least 20 minutes. And I have my evening routine where I do my habit tracker, which is obviously, that's a big element of the habit formation system. And I want us to kind of talk about that because we all recently committed to this habit tracking. And I want to get feedback from you guys on how that's going. But my habit tracker in the evening, my journaling in the evening, these are all non-negotiables for me. I want to say at least the goal is to hit it 90% of the time. So at least 5 to 6 days a week, I'm doing every single one of these things and having a system of accountability, right? We have our check-in every Monday evening, which is also another huge part of the habit formation process. You gotta have, not you have to, but it helps to have external accountability around your habit formations. So Juan, tell me a little bit about your habit.
Right. So I plan out so you mentioned that like it would hurt your stomach when you would look at a spreadsheet. I'm the opposite, brother. Like so many other components of my life were organized because I was thriving in business. I was doing, I was one of those big guys that was doing pretty well. And I actually like looking at spreadsheets, like tracking things when it came to like making money and creating wealth, right? That's always been something that I enjoyed. I didn't have the connection on how that could help me with my physical self. Like that took a little bit of time, and more recently, reconnecting with you guys, our accountability group, the app that we're using to track. I'm like, okay, man, now I'm getting this feeling that I got when I was creating for my business. I'm getting that with the weight loss journey, with the body transformation journey. So it wasn't really in my awareness until I started tracking some of these things. So what I do every morning now is like the first thing I do is I wake up and I go out to my balcony and I take in sunlight, right? I just sit there, I take in sunlight. I sit on my chair, meditate for as long as I can. I don't time any of these things because of my association to meditation and all that. That's still something that I'm working on. The relationship that I have to that and the way I look at it is like I meditate all day because I'm very, very mindful and very in the moment. So I'm like meditating all day. But I do sit there and just let the thoughts come. So I start with a meditation, then I do a yoga practice, really quick one, 10 to 15 minutes. And that completely changes my state. And as I said, I plan everything on Sundays and Mondays. So I have an in-person trainer who I'll reach out to on Sunday, Mondays. Hey, these are the days that I'm going to work out. Also using another app tool that through you where you'll set out the workouts for me. So like those are actually the most important things that I look at with making sure that I take care of me. And then my son, I share custody with my son, of my son, and that's another thing too. It's like, hey, what's my son going to be doing throughout the week? I like to have an idea. Now I'm flexible with some things, but there's other things that are non-negotiables that like have to happen. And I put these habits, these things in place to make sure that it all happens, right? And that the app tracker that we use has and I haven't been that great recently. With it, but it's a great tool to have to go back to be like, okay, these are the things that you were doing when you were in flow in all these areas. So what is that? And for me, I do get overwhelmed when I have a big list. I really like to simplify things, right? So I have maybe 6 or 7 things that I have to get done, but I think I started with like 4. So I've added a couple things as I've gone over the past few months. So those are some of the things that I'm doing currently to make sure that I get the non-negotiables in on a daily basis.
Yeah, and guys, the habit tracker that he's referring to that we're using is we built a habit tracker in Notion. Now, there is plenty habit tracking apps that you can use. But I do advise everyone to at least experiment with some sort of habit tracking app. And it's pretty simple. We outline exactly what our daily habits are. There's a little box that you have to tick once it's done. I do it right before bed at night. It's a part of my night routine. I grab my iPad, I tick the boxes, and there's this dopamine release that I experience when I get to tick these boxes, which helps you solidify all of this stuff as habits, right? Because I love, but you got to do it with integrity. Willie, talk to me a little bit about your daily habits.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as like gamifying life, right? Like it's kind of like what Juan said. We get to take the habits that we have in other areas and apply it to all these other areas. And so like for me, the big intention for me has really been like just getting out of my comfort zone. So I've been really trying to be more thoughtful about like the time I spend on reading my books, on honestly like learning new skills. Like one of the things I wanted to try early, I fell off a little bit, but just trying to get back into it. And I think we talked about it before the podcast, is content creation. Obviously I want to continue to work on my physique. I feel like it's one, like my health and physical goals are always like, something I'm always like chasing, but probably never get. So I'm always like things that I want to do with my body. Yoga was a big intention for me. So using the Notion app to kind of track like, hey, I want to go to yoga 2 times a week because I want to improve like my vitality and obviously mobility. Or, hey, I want to make sure I'm getting my steps in because I want to remain lean, even though I'm not going to necessarily diet at a certain point. So I wanted to build a habit of walking. I wanted to build a habit of reading. So I said, hey, during my walks, I want to make sure I'm listening to an audiobook for 30 minutes. So just trying to find things that I thought that were like areas of opportunity for me that I think we hear a lot that we say, hey, like most people try to do everything and they accomplish nothing. I wanted to find like the things that I thought were most important to like those big rocks, those big goals, like making money, becoming the better version of myself, better relationships. And I thought about all the different habits that I thought that could help do that. And I wanted to make sure that I could track them. And so obviously I'm using Notion. I think, for me, I've always been kind of like middle of the road when it came to data, because data is like one of those things that we all have a hard time really like looking inward. And I think that's the part that people don't get. Like even looking in the mirror, right? Like some people struggle with even really looking in the mirror, looking for, their own flaws, because sometimes that can put them down a rabbit hole. Even stepping on the scale. Some people have negative relationships with stepping on the scale. I remember, when I first met Brix, we used to always go back and forth about the idea of stepping on a scale. And it's super dope to hear even his stance on that change, because it really is just more of a data accumulation thing. It's like, yo, we got to get better at looking in the mirror, just not just physically, mentally, emotionally. And so like
Yes.
even my thing on Instagram came from Brix. It was about going inward. When you go inward, you can use data and your habits and tracking to help you fix the things that you see in the mirror. And that's what I've been trying to use my habits for, was really like, bro, you get emotionally, irate. So like what habit can you form to kind of help you manage your emotions? Meditation, going to therapy. Oh, bro, you fluctuate with your diet all the time. What could you do better to make sure that even on the days that you're not, eating right, that you still have a good sound habit of your body? Whoa, I can take steps. Or hey, I can make sure that I'm at least measuring the food 5 days out of 7, so I can make sure that I'm not, having these spikes of overweight, underweight. Hey, what can you do to be better in your romantic relationships? Maybe start with telling yourself the truth and practice being more honest with yourself, and doing that with the people you love. So I just look at habits as a way to really help me get better at not getting so scared of looking at myself in the mirror, but seeing them as opportunities. Like, hey, cool. I'm not the best at reading books all the time. What can I do? Oh, I can listen to an audiobook for 30 minutes. I'll make that a habit. I'll try to make that a habit, because it starts with obviously trying, and then obviously I like what Juan said. I do agree that it does. I wouldn't consider a habit something you did one time. As your habits are what Aristotle said, which you repeatedly do. So we need some type of quantitative metric on how repetitive you've done that to call it a habit. But yeah, that's how I use it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think when it comes to your identity, like your habits are your identity, right? You're not who you say you are what you repeatedly do, like you said, using that Aristotle quote. And looking at yourself from that perspective, I think puts a lot in perspective, right? Who am I? Where does my current habits lead me over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? If you did everything you do today for the next 10 years, what is your physical health? What do you look like? What is your mental health like? Like really try to simulate what that's like, because I think it'll put things in perspective if you ask yourself that question and you really sit with that. So I think everyone should do that. And honestly, when I put my daily habits through that filter or through that perspective, I love the direction my life is going. And I think everyone should feel that way, right? If you don't feel like what you do every day brings you to the quote unquote promised land, then you got some adjustments to make, for sure.
So Brix, I got a question. Because one of the things I think that some people struggle with, and like I know I would, is like how do you deal with the routineness of habits, right? Because I think some people realize like it's like we're so used to that instant gratification that I think some people, they have to realize like habits are like so long forming. Like how do we make sure that we stay like attuned to like connecting our habits to our goals? Like how do we make sure that like we're creating that frame? Because a lot of the things, man, like for all of us, right? Like it took me a year, like when I really locked in, to like have a body that I thought was decent enough to like really get dressed up and go outside. It took me a year. I wouldn't even buy clothes for a year. And so I think most people struggle with like, oh man, I track my food for a year. I got to like take steps for a year. Like, how do you keep yourself motivated during that time frame?
I think that's a great question. What's coming up for me is your why, right? When you're doing things in order to get something in return, it has a very different experience compared to when you're doing things because it's something that you want to attach to your identity. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, walking 15,000 steps or 10,000 steps a day is something that's going to be good for your mental health. It's going to be, you know, something that keeps your body feeling good on a day-to-day basis. Yes, it will help you stay lean. It may help you lose weight, but focusing on what it brings to you today, I think helps solidify it as a habit versus it being attached to some arbitrary outcome in the future. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I think also being okay with repetitiveness and not allowing, because here's the thing, success in anything is boring. The process is fucking boring. And if you're expecting to always feel stimulated, if you're expecting to always feel excited, if you're expected to always feel motivated, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So I think going into this journey, understanding that it's going to be monotonous. There's going to be moments where you're like, fuck, why do I have to do this? It's like, you kind of got to make peace with that. I say this with the We Are God's group coaching program. Don't let the monotony of the repetitive nature of weight loss rock your ass to sleep and have you drifting off course. Whenever you find that you're feeling unstimulated or bored, that's like, you got to use that as a cue to lock in more. Now, I know that that's a certain level of awareness that people have to build up to, but I think going into the entire habit forming journey with an understanding like, yo, this shit is not about to be exciting, will help you navigate those moments where you notice, oh shit, this shit is whack, this shit is boring, I don't want to do it anymore. You know, just having that understanding, I think, will keep you on track.
And Brix, to add to that, right? So for me, it's super important for me, like, to be in the moment and understand that, like, this moment, whether I'm feeling good or bad, shitty or like motivated, that has no reference as to what's gonna determine if I'm gonna continue doing this habit, right? So like, you need to, and this comes with time too. It comes with once you've been able to do something for a certain amount of days, you know, you're able to channel into like more present moments and understand, like you share in the We Are God's group. It's like, hey, yeah, this is boring, but you have to embrace that. You have to embrace that and almost mindfully look for a way in your head to find motivation in that, right? Even when there's no motivation there. It's like, so how can you consistently have the conversations with yourself to get you to do the actions that are going to bring, you know, like I mentioned earlier, healing to that part of you, right? Because I do think that, especially if you're overweight and you're looking, you know, and you've done this yo-yo thing, you have this attachment to like this long-term thing, but and you're not really appreciating the moments that you're going through. And those moments, they're not going to all feel good. But when you've gone through this shit like we have, it doesn't fucking matter to us. Like, we don't think about that. Like, we're going to do it anyways. And that comes with time. That comes with actually having that habit formed, right? So I think it's important to bring, the practice is bring yourself to presence, like bring yourself to this moment, accept that it's not good or bad. Okay, yeah, I feel shitty, but that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be long-term. So let me channel the energy that I want, right? So that practice brings people to take that next step, you know, to get up and go for a walk, right? To move. I think that's important.
Yeah. So I think what you said about what is the conversation like with yourself when you're in the middle of a challenging moment where you're trying to motivate yourself to take the action that you don't feel like doing. I think knowing that the gains, if you will, are compounded when you are able to achieve the action that you're trying to form the habit in those moments where you feel the most challenged, when you feel the least like doing it. When you're able to fucking get that win, that I think etches the behavior more into your nervous system. It makes it more a part of you when you're able to do it in those moments. So whether you have the experience to validate what I just said or not, I want you to internalize that as a truth, right? I want you to understand that when you're able to do shit that you don't feel like fucking doing, you're way more likely to be able to do it.
Right. And
consistently.
what even happens with that, right? Is like, for some people may look at us like when we work out, when we're lifting weights, when you walk in the gym, they're like, oh, that guy, man, he's probably been doing this his entire life. What people don't realize is like, no, that's 10 years of a journey. Like it's easier to him. It might look hard to you, and it's still hard in conception, but it actually becomes easier over time. That's what habits do for you. They make the what looks difficult for other people, it actually is a lot easier for us because we've been doing it for this longer period. And that goes into play with any habit that you create, right? Like it might look hard for you, but it's not that hard for us, right? And that's what you want to get to, right?
Yeah, I think what people don't realize is that the hardest thing is the formation of the habit. That's why the whole 21-day thing became a thing, right? Is because like in our brains mentally, and like I said, don't want to get into the neuroscience of it because I'm not an expert there, but we actually have to use more brain power, more energy of our brain to start a new habit than it is to actually stay steady, right? So it's like give you the idea of learning a new language. Like you said, someone who's starting to learn Spanish and somebody who's been speaking Spanish for 30 years, those people are not using the same brain power to do that task. So when you're actually starting to go to the gym, actually when you're starting to eat right, yes, guys, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough because it's new. What we're trying to get you to is to that part where it's no longer so taxing to go to the gym, where it now becomes a part of who you are, and now you're going to that next gear of like, what exercises do you want to switch up to? How do you want to train that day? It's no longer am I going to train that day? And so I think I would always, like me and Brix, when we would like talk about YouTube and we'd be talking about the problem statement of helping men lose weight, we'd stay up late or we would be in the car, we would travel. I said, bro, it's like, how do we bridge the gap of when they first start to when they see those results to like this getting them there? Because we like once they understand or they see the results of their discipline or their action, I think it's a much easier read. But it's like that 30-day, that 60-day, that's where all your attrition happens. That's where the people stop going to the gym, or that first weekend where their bros turn up and they like eat crazy. They're out, they're gone. And so it's like that's where the war on obesity, especially in the Black community, is going to start, is in that habit formation stage, that first 30 to 60 days.
Yeah. I think the conversation about willpower management, right, comes into play here, because it was a game changer for me when I realized that willpower is not this unlimited source, right? People talk about motivation, willpower, kind of the same, but not really. But when you treat your willpower with intention and with reverence, knowing that, you know, you only have but so much. When you can use your willpower strategically to form the habit, that's, I think, the best allocation of willpower, right? Is using it intentionally to form the habit, because once the habit is established, you no longer have to use as much willpower anymore, right? So I just kind of wanted to add that. But I do want to back up to the conversations that we have with ourselves in the moment where we have a streak going, right? And I think that's the beauty of habit tracking, is that you can start streaks. Our minds love streaks, right? That's why all these apps, they try to use these streak counters to to kind of encourage you. It's something that we get a dopamine hit from knowing that we have a streak going, and it helps. So again, I advise using any sort of technology as assistance in the habit formation process. But I digress. The conversation, right? Let's say you notice you've been on it for 19 days. And on day 19, you're like, man, fuck, I don't feel like doing this shit, right? I think it's important to decide what you're gonna do when that happens. Have a plan, right? We all know, okay, in the beginning, we're gonna have motivation, we're gonna have momentum in the beginning, we're gonna be excited. But I think it's something powerful to have a plan in advance. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do on this day 19 that I'm describing, so that you're prepared. Like I said, like I say this all the time, it's the difference between getting punched in the stomach unexpectedly and knowing that someone's about to punch you in the stomach. Two very different experiences. You can kind of brace your core when you know it's coming, but when you don't know it's coming, it fucking knocks the wind out of you. Right? We all know that inevitable moment of, oh shit, I don't feel like doing this habit is gonna happen. So let's talk about the conversation, right? What's the conversation like for you guys? Well, Willie, I'll start with you. What's the conversation like when you are in a moment where you know you need to do something that you don't feel like doing? What's that inner dialogue like?
It's tough, like, because usually I think I'm really good at influencing myself not to do something. So I think I have a hard, like, I give you all the reasons. So I think for me is really just trying to remember, like we talked about my why. I mean, obviously I think a lot of times it's fleeting. Like a lot of times when I have like negative emotions and negative thoughts, it only is for that time period. And then once I like do something else or get busy or get on the phone, it goes away. So like really trying to understand that it's just momentarily. Then I also have to give myself grace. I mean, even times when I don't feel like doing something, I think what I used to do is compound it. I used to be the guy that would like eat out on Friday and be like, fuck it. I'm gonna eat out tomorrow and Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. Or I would be the guy that's like, hey, I don't want to track today, or I don't want to go to yoga, and then it just like stays. So I think for me, the biggest thing for me is like even in the moments where I'm weak, because I still have them. I probably will have them forever. That's why they're opportunities for me. Is I always find the win in getting back on track. Is like what do you do after a time where you have a mistake? I think that defines most people with strong habits. I think the people with really strong habits, the habit is there and the miss is the anomaly. What happens is though, a lot of people's habit is the miss and they continue the miss, and that's really who they are.
Yeah, I think
that makes sense. What about
Willie
you,
hit
Juan?
all the points on exactly what it entails, you know. So
But I want us to get graphic about what the conversation is actually like, and what is the mental process.
so
that
I
you
mean,
go
I can
through
relate
in
to everything
moment.
that Willie said. So very similar with how it used to be. What it is now, I keep going back to this, but I go back to like being present, being very present, and then I sit with it, and then I don't judge myself if, you know, if I don't.
Do me a favor, Warren. For those who don't really understand the concept of being present, right? Give us a quick breakdown of what do you mean when you say that. What do you mean?
Most of the time we're in our thinking brain, right? We're in thought. We're thinking about what we should do, could do, what we need to do. That's where we are most of the time when we're thinking. And when you're thinking about what you did, what you've done, like you're comparing, right? So most of that's where thought is 100% of the time. It's either looking forward or it's looking backward, right? So the concept of presence is just recognizing that. Right now, our egos stay alive with future tense and past tense. And we villainize the ego, but the ego is not a villain. It's really just understanding what it does. Because once you do that, you have awareness around it. And now you're in this space. So I mentioned future, past, right? You're in the space of now. So we're here right now. That's what presence is. When you can conceptualize and get out of the thought of, okay, what do I want? What is it over there? and what am I thinking about? And then be right here. You enter into this energy, and again, you have to practice this, but like I've been doing this for years where I can get myself to be motivated in that moment once I let go. Like I stop talking shit about myself, or I stop thinking about what I should do or what I need to do. I get into these feelings that I had when I remember I threw a game-winning pass on fourth and 12 in high school, and it was like a moment where I was a quarterback in high school. I threw it, and I remember looking at the crowd, and it was one of the best feelings of my life. I can get myself to feel that shit all the time now, and that's what the practice of being here present, right? So that again, that doesn't happen over that. I've created a habit of doing that. So that does that give an explanation of it? Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's what I do. Again,
this
is years of being able to get to this, but I don't judge myself anymore. I don't look at things as good or bad, what I should or shouldn't do, what I could do. Like I literally try to eliminate all the shit words in my life because words have power, right? Words have influence. So, you know, it's one thing when you're in a group of people, like people are going to say, oh man, that's hard. That's difficult. Like, yeah, cool. I try to go back to, well, how am I talking to myself? Like I'll reframe words. You know, I mentioned earlier what I made habit mean to me. So that's the game that I play. I play that game to get me to do whatever the hell it is I need to do. And if someone were like from the outside looking in at my life, they'd be like, Juan's chilling, but I'm moving all day. Like most days I'm doing something. There's things that I'm doing all day long because of these systems that I've put into place for a long period of time.
What do you get like a high when people say like this things that you do is hard? Like because like it kind of like separates you from them, right? Like yeah, like most people can't do 72-hour fast, so like that's fucking dope. Like you're doing hard shit.
You know where I go to
you.
with that, Willie? It's like, you know, and I've done a lot of like spiritual work and energy work. I know that I can like channel my energy to people, you know. So it's like when I hear that from someone, I get into like my heart and like I send them like, okay, but it's not really that hard. You know, that's what I want you to feel for me. And that's what I want to be. So who I'm being with people, when you're in a room with me and you spent some time with me, you know that's how I am. It's cool. Like I understand that you're there with that process, but it's like I want to be the light of the other side of that. That's the way I internalize it.
But then it's like I like it, but it's like, but then there's like this dichotomy that I have. It's like things that are easy aren't not necessarily worth going after because everybody would do it. So it's like at the end of the day, if everybody would do it, then we wouldn't have like these big lofty goals. They wouldn't be goals. I don't have a goal to eat Big Macs because everybody can do it.
Right. True.
You know. So at the end of the day, I like a lot of the goals.
You know, again,
like,
I think it takes time to get to like where I've gotten to. My story's pretty crazy, Willie. It's like I think I'm lucky. I really look at my entire life as a whole. It's like I'm super lucky to be where I am. I am someone who at 17 like divorced my parents. I was lucky enough to have this family take care of my younger brother, and you know, a community reach out to me and help me out. And it's like I got this perspective of like how I grew up, and then like this family that got me to start thinking at the age of 18, 19, where it was just night and day the way I was brought up there. So like I know that I've been given this gift in life. And yeah, you're right. Most people aren't gonna experience it the way I experience it, but my long-term goal in life is for people to feel that, like when they're around me. Like I want to leave you with that type of energy. That's what I'm intending to do on a daily basis. So like I know that I need to make hard things look fucking easy and enjoyable, you know. And I really do get myself there mentally, you know. That's just what I do. And again, it's taken, you know, I'm 40, about to turn 43 in a couple weeks. It's taken a long time to get here. And am I here all the fucking time? Fuck no, I'm not, bro. I'm not. But I've gotten pretty good at getting myself there on the daily, you know? That it takes time and takes practice for sure.
Dope.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about what my process is like, because I think I have more battles in my mind than the average person. I don't know. That I feel like That may not be true, right? But that's what it feels like. I feel like I'm definitely always dealing with resistance from my lower self, right? Like the hole that I've dug myself out of is extremely deep. You feel what I'm saying? Like my shadow, the activity in my shadow, some of the shit that I've done in my life, some of the places that I've been is such a polar opposite to where I am today. So I think my mind has way more material to use against me than I feel like probably you guys, right? I know a lot about you guys' lives. I'm not saying way more, but like I said, anyway, so with that being said, my mental battles are constant. And it's to the point now where it almost feels like a comfort zone for me to be in a mental battle with myself because I've trained myself. I've built the habit of looking at these moments of mental struggle, of mental battles as opportunity. These are like the training grounds that I've used to build myself. I build my confidence. I've built my willpower. I've been able to dominate myself by winning these moments when I am faced with a decision to do something that I know I need to do, but I don't feel like doing. So I think that's the opportunity there, is to build the habit of looking at these challenging moments, these fucking battles between your higher and your lower self, right? And I guess describe a battle between your higher and your lower self is any moment where you hear that voice in your head trying to talk you out of doing something that you know betters you, right? Whatever that may be. That's what I look at as a battle between your higher and lower self. So if you can form the habit, right? If you can somehow start to bring yourself to presence when you're in that moment and look at that as an opportunity to build yourself up, to make a deposit into the higher version of yourself, to build your discipline, to build your willpower, to be able to have more sovereignty over your life, have more control over your life. When you build the habit of looking at those moments as opportunities to do that, you start to show up to them a lot differently. It's like, Willie, you used the word gamify earlier. It's like I've gamified the fuck out of life with these moments. And I want to say, man, 80% of the time I win those battles. But it didn't start off that way. It started off where I would take a lot of L's. And it did take resilience. It did take grit, mental toughness. It did take this feeling of being fucking fed up with the way that my decision making, you know, the direction that was taking my life before. And it's like, nah, I'm not going that motherfucking way no more. So I know in order for me to take my life in a different direction, that I have to make different choices in these moments. And with me internalizing the truth of that is the thing that gave me the fuel to start to, you know, gain more wins in these moments. And it's made all the difference. Obviously, I have a long road to go, right? The nature of the battles are a little bit different nowadays, but new level, new devil. You feel what I'm saying? Like I'm now at a place where the battles are different, and they're becoming more and more challenging. But I'm excited about it. Like even right now, I'm getting fucking goosebumps, thinking about where this is going to take me. But I think it's important for us to first, like I said, build the awareness around when you're in that moment. When you're in the middle of a moment where you're having a battle, if you will, between your higher and your lower self. When you know you need to do a thing, but you don't feel like doing it, and you are struggling to get yourself to do it, you have to look at that as opportunity. It is. It's fucking golden opportunity. For sure. But yeah, so ultimately, right, our habits form our lives, right? I love that quote. Your habits are the invisible architects of your life. You're not who you think you are. You are what you do repeatedly. Period. I think it's a very powerful perspective to start to take a closer look at your current habits. Maybe that's the first step. Look at your current habits and ask yourself, where do I end up in 5, 10, 20 years with these current set of habits? I think when you frame it that way, it gives you perspective. It'll give you some fuel to make some changes when you're able to honestly tell yourself the direction that you'll end up, right, with your current habits. I think it's important. I think it's important to have grace with yourself, right? The element of self-compassion in the habit formation process is absolutely necessary. I always use the term like you're breaking a spell. You're breaking a fucking spell. And that requires time. It's a messy process. Habit formation is a messy process. And forgiving yourself, you're gonna have to forgive yourself a lot. Because if you allow guilt and shame to sabotage you, you're never gonna get there. So acknowledge when you step off course, and then forgive yourself, love yourself, and say, hey, listen, tomorrow's a new day. Let me just get back to it. It's all about the fucking get back. It's all about the rebound. 100%. I think it's about the rebound and using these moments where you step off course as opportunities to learn things about yourself, like reflect. I'm huge on intentional self-reflection, right? Because that's where you grow. It's in the reflection. You don't grow in the moment of challenge. You grow when you reflect on the challenge, right? So I think it's important to really understand that. And to be constantly self-compassionate and patient with yourself. And I know that's the struggle right there. Any final words, guys?
No, I think for me, I think the biggest thing is just making sure people understand that like you don't need to do a lot of different habits. Like you need to start slow. You need to be intentional, get the daily wins. Like one of the things I think even when we look at habits and goals, really focus on like a week or a day, man. Like take it one day at a time. Give yourself grace. Be excited about the small wins. The small wins will stack up. I mean, again, so many people get so ambitious. I want to lose 30. I want to lose 40 pounds. Bro, before we even get there, let's track our food. Let's get our steps in. It sounds boring, but I promise you it's much easier to do the daily wins than to try to do a year win and then stop and start and stop and start. We all have been talking at exorbitant amounts of times telling people, hey, it took us 8 years, 9 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years to get our health and fitness right. It's because we always had this big, gigantic, aspirational goal. And then when we fail it, we pile on the misery and then we just go deeper into shame.
Yeah, love it, Willie.
So start small.
How do you eat a whole elephant? One bite at a time. So you just simplify it. You have to simplify it for yourself. And in those moments, I mean, there's so many beautiful things that we talked about in this conversation. You have to try things out. You have to try things out, have grace, understand that because you didn't win one moment, it doesn't mean you can't win the next one. And that's really what it's about. It's stepping up to the plate. Another thing, people know Michael Jordan for scoring the most points ever in the history of the NBA, right? That's what he's known for. What they don't know, and I don't know if the stat is up to date, but what they don't know is he also led the league every single year in missed shots, right? So it's about stepping up to the plate and taking a shot and trying things out, having grace, repeating. Before you know it, you form habits. You form these habits. Gamifying. I love that. You said that, Willie. It's like we got to gamify this. It's not. I say this to my barber all the time. I say it in Spanish. La vida no es tan seria, man. It's not that serious. It's not that serious. So if you can fool your mind to think that, like in the moment, you're gonna achieve a lot more. You're gonna achieve a lot more, and before you know it, you're gonna get there. You're gonna eat that entire elephant.
Listen, guys, if you're listening, screenshot the podcast. Leave us a review. Tag us on social media. Like, I would love to hear the feedback from you guys on these episodes. Obviously, we make these, to serve you guys. So your feedback would be golden for us. So screenshot it, tag us on social media. All of our social media handles can be found in the description of wherever you're listening to this. And we appreciate you a lot. Like, I want you guys to know that every moment that you invest listening to this podcast, you know, we don't take your time and attention for granted. You're allowing us to do what we're passionate about, and that is to share our experiences in hopes of making your process a little bit easier. All right, so much love, and until next week, peace. Peace, y'all.